Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The Stranger She Called Daddy. The backyard was crowded but quiet, just the kind of polite noise you get at suburban barbecues. Colby Rains stood near the grill, bottle of root beer sweating in his hand, nodding at conversations he was not listening to. His eyes were on his daughter, Ivy, who was giggling near the swing set in her pink sundress. Then he heard it. "Daddy, push me." The voice was Ivy's. But she was not looking at him. She was running towards someone else. A man, tall, smug, white dress shirt open at the collar, turned around, arms wide open like he had been waiting for her. "Hey, princess," the man said, lifting her up like it was something he had done 1,000 times. "You ready to fly?" Colby's bottle nearly cracked in his hand. People were watching, smiling, laughing like it was nothing. But to Colby, the world had narrowed to that moment. Ivy had never called anyone else daddy. Ever. He walked over, slowly, each step heavier than the last. "Ivy," he said, steady but sharp. "What did you just call him?" The man turned to face him, still holding Ivy. Tessa, Colby's wife, appeared beside them, fake laugh ready. "Oh, it's just a game they play. He's been helping out while you were traveling." Colby's stare cut through her. "What's his name?" "Nolan," the man said, reaching out with a hand that Colby did not take. "Just a friend." Colby forced a smile. "Friend of who?" Nobody answered. In that moment, Colby did not know the truth. But his instincts, those finely honed, ex-CIA, battle-tested instincts, screamed it in his gut. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Ivy tugged on Nolan's sleeve. "Can we go back to the swings, Daddy?" That word again. Colby looked at his wife. Her eyes dropped. He knew what the next move was. And it would not be loud. It would be cold. Precise. Silent. Like every mission he had survived before. But this time, the enemy was home. How do you fight a war when the traitor sleeps in your bed? Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. Colby sat in the garage that night, the only light coming from the monitor in front of him. His hands moved like muscle memory, plugging in flash drives, decrypting messages, cross-referencing data. The tools of a past life. He had not touched any of this since he left the agency. He thought he was done with shadows. Clearly, he was wrong. The first thing he pulled was Tessa's cloud backup. Passwords were still the same. Most people never changed them. She had not expected a war. Colby found photos, cropped selfies with Nolan, timestamps that aligned with weekends she claimed to be visiting her sister in Asheville. Hotel receipts, GPS logs, voice memos. Then he found it, an audio file. Ivy's voice. "I missed you, Daddy Nolan." The sound cracked something inside him. But he did not let it show, not even to himself. Instead, he clicked on another file. This one was video. Tessa, in a low whisper. "Colby is smart, but he only sees what I let him. Nolan says I just have to keep things steady for a few more months." He paused it, stared at her frozen face. This was no simple affair. This was a setup. Colby leaned back in his chair. The garage felt colder now. He could hear the clock ticking like a countdown. The door creaked open. Tessa peeked in. "Hey, you coming to bed?" He turned, nodded slowly. "In a bit." Her smile was automatic. "Okay." She left, and with her went the last illusion of innocence. Colby turned back to the screen, eyes locked. Now it was not just about betrayal. It was about control. He had spent his life protecting this country from threats. He never expected the real enemy would be sitting across the dinner table. The kid arrived in a plain manila envelope, no label, just like he requested. He ran the swab inside Ivy's cheek while she played with her Legos. She laughed and said it tickled. "You are making sure I am a robot or not," she joked. Colby smiled, but it never reached his eyes. He sent the sample overnight. For days later, the results came in. The paper was crisp. The numbers were clear. There was no need for interpretation. Probability of paternity, 0%. Colby sat still for several minutes. He read it again. Then again. It did not change. The paper stayed the same, even though the ground beneath him shifted. He put the envelope in a fireproof case and placed it under the floorboard behind his workbench. Not for protection, just for timing. He did not scream. He did not cry. That would come later. Maybe. For now, he made lists. Names. Events. Evidence. Backups. Legal steps. Financial accounts. Surveillance logs. Contacts from the old life. He still had them. Everything would be used. But not all at once. This had to be careful. This had to be earned. He looked at Ivy through the window. She was in the yard, drawing in chalk. She would always be his daughter. No test would take that from him. But someone else had taken everything else. Now it was time to take it back, piece by piece. And when it was over, no one would look at Tessa or Nolan the same again. Not their friends. Not their family. Not the public. They thought the lie protected them. But the truth was already moving, and it would destroy everything in its path. Colby did not sleep that night. Not because of pain. Pain was familiar. It was the clarity that kept him awake. He was back in operational mode. That deep, steady part of his brain that once tracked warlords in Kabul, extracted data under threat of death, and hunted ghosts in foreign soil. That part was alive again. He pulled the old case from under the stairs. The one with no name tag. Inside, 2 hard drives, burner phones, a set of encrypted thumbsticks, and a sealed contact list. Old numbers. Trusted names. Colby sat down, opened the first drive. It still worked. Loaded fast. Inside were recovery tools, deep scrape software, and VPNs that ran like shadows through layers of fake identities. He slipped on his headset. Time to rebuild the war room. One by one, he cloned Tessa's devices. He unlocked her iCloud with a recovered password from an old password manager. Within minutes, years of private data opened like a confession. Messages, locations, payments, even voice searches. And then emails. Dozens of them. Some from Nolan. Some from third parties with real estate contracts Colby had never seen, but his signature was on them. Sloppy fakes. And one from a burner account linked to a name Colby had not heard in years, Vincent Murrow, a former black market broker the CIA once flagged for selling access to digital infrastructure. What did Tessa have to do with him? Colby's breathing slowed. His fingers stopped moving for a moment. He looked at the message again. Then again. The betrayal was bigger than he thought. This was no affair. This was infiltration. He stood, walked outside, and watched the sun rise over his quiet neighborhood. This world had no idea what was coming, and he would give them front row seats to the truth. Colby walked through the house like a stranger in his own life. He examined everything not for comfort, but for patterns. There were 3 wine glasses in the sink. He poured them out, one by one, slowly. Tessa was in the shower. Ivy was at school. This was the moment to dig deeper. He went to the office and opened the drawer she said she never used. Inside, documents. Property transfer papers with forged signatures, a power of attorney form with his name, dated 2 months ago. Real estate under his name. Debt he never agreed to. He scanned them, every page. One stuck out. A deal signed with Becker Holdings, LLC. Owner, Nolan Becker. It was a shell company. Colby opened a side terminal, looked up the registration address. It led to a strip mall. One of the addresses used in overseas laundering cases. He recognized the pattern. It was textbook money movement. A mix of fake consulting invoices, overinflated asset transfers, and tax-deductible donations through ghost charities. Tessa and Nolan were in deeper than he thought, and someone bigger was behind them. He remembered what Nolan said at the barbecue. Just a friend. Just a friend who had set up an identity laundering front. Colby checked his credit report. For open accounts he had never touched. One loan worth $110,000 filed under joint marital funds. It was a setup to tank him financially. They were building their escape while using his name to finance it. And the worst part? Legally, on paper, he was complicit. Unless he acted now. Not just to expose them, but to control the narrative before they destroyed his. That evening, Colby made dinner. He cooked her favorite, grilled salmon with lemon pepper crust, roasted garlic potatoes, steamed broccoli. He poured her wine, poured one for himself too. Acted like nothing was wrong. She smiled, played the part, wore the same perfume she used to wear in their first year of marriage. Cheap nostalgia. I feel like we have not had a dinner like this in forever, she said. He nodded. You are right. She kept talking. About Ivy. About work. About how Nolan had been such a help with the house when Colby traveled. He smiled at that. Yeah, he seems dependable. She flinched, barely. A small twitch near her mouth. That was confirmation. Colby reached for his wine but did not drink. Instead, he asked, Do you love him? Tessa froze. Excuse me. I asked a simple question. Colby, what are you talking about? Ivy called him Daddy, he said, staring at her now. At the barbecue. In front of everyone. Tessa opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked away. I think I deserve the truth, he said. She hesitated. Then shook her head. It is complicated. No, he said. It is actually not. You cheated. You used my name to sign contracts. You put me in debt. You taught my daughter to call another man dad. Silence. Then her voice cracked. You were never here, Colby. You were always somewhere else. He nodded. I was working. Protecting people. Building a life. You were gone, she snapped. You were never loyal, he said quietly. You were just waiting for a better exit. Tessa stood to leave. Sit down, he said. She froze. He slid a folder across the table. The top sheet, the DNA test. Her face went pale. This is not dinner, Colby said. This is the beginning of the end. Tessa stared at the folder like it was on fire. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She tried to speak twice, but her breath caught both times. Colby sat perfectly still. His voice did not rise. Do you want to lie again? Or just admit it now? Colby, I was going to tell you. When? Before or after you drained the joint accounts and left me with your real estate fraud? Her shoulders tensed. I did not mean for it to get like this. Like what? A child that is not mine, a forged paper trail, and a man in my house acting like he owns it. She reached for the folder, but Colby pulled it back calmly. Read it, he said. Then look me in the eye and say nothing happened. Tessa's hands trembled as she pulled the test results from the folder. Her eyes scanned the page once, twice. She blinked rapidly, then rubbed at her temple like it might erase the truth. She is still your daughter, Colby. You raised her. She loves you. And you used that, he said coldly. You used me. She sat down again, but her eyes were unfocused, like she was staring into the wreckage of something she thought she could control. Ivy never needed to know, she whispered. No, but you are going to learn something now, he said. You made this mess, and I am going to make sure everyone who helped you, every friend, every partner, every single person in that web, goes down with it. Tessa's head snapped up. You cannot do that. He leaned forward slightly, voice calm. You forgot who I was. She swallowed. This was not planned like that. Nolan he offered help. Money. He understood things you never did. Colby nodded slowly. Yeah, like fraud. And how to manipulate people. Then he stood, leaving the folder behind. Finish your wine. Tessa sat frozen, eyes glassy. Colby walked out into the hallway. His hands did not shake. The war had started. But this time, it was personal. 2 days later, Colby stood in front of the regional records office, dressed in neutral tones and sunglasses. Inside, the building was quiet, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, the hum of printers and clacking keyboards filling the air. He had an appointment under a different name, one he used back when covert work required more than a badge. A clerk, barely out of college, walked him through public real estate transfers. I need everything signed under this name in the past 18 months, Colby said, sliding a sticky note across the counter. The name, Colby J. Raines. Within 10 minutes, the young man returned with a USB drive. There are 17 properties, he said. Most recently, a duplex on Hoyt Street and a commercial building listed as a wellness center downtown. Colby nodded, pocketed the drive, and walked out without a word. Back home, he loaded the files. The signatures were their sloppy, scanned versions of his own, attached to contracts written in legalese he would never use. But it was the routing numbers that told the real story. The payments funneled through a single consulting firm, Silverhawk Development. He cross-checked the firm with Tessa's emails. 3 messages. 2 attachments. All linked to Nolan's LLC. Then he found it, a ledger file buried in an email draft folder. Not sent, not deleted. Hidden. It showed payments from Silverhawk to a private fund in the Caymans, plus kickbacks to J. Haskins, listed as a facilitator. That was not just a name. That was Congressman Jared Haskins, the man Colby once briefed on cyber threat mapping. The operation was national. Tessa was not just a cheater. She was a pawn in a laundering ring tied to government corruption. Colby stood up, shut the laptop, and drew the blackout curtains. He would need more than evidence now. He would need to collapse the system from the inside. Colby sat inside a dim, quiet diner on the edge of town. The kind of place where no one asked questions and the coffee never ran out. He sat in the back booth, facing the door. Old habits never die. 10 minutes passed before a man slid into the seat across from him. Older, gaunt, wearing a faded baseball cap and jacket zipped to the neck. Been a long time, the man said, sipping from the mug already in front of him. Thought you went civilian. I did, Colby replied. But now the civilian world has teeth. The man smirked. You said you had something worth coming out for. Colby slid the USB drive across the table. Real estate shell. International laundering. A sitting congressman. And a list of shell firms linking back to weapons data theft. The man raised an eyebrow. And you got all this from your wife cheating? Colby's eyes were steel. I got all this because she was sloppy. The man pocketed the drive. You want it cleaned or public? Both, Colby said. But on my timeline. The man chuckled. Still controlling the op. Some things never change. Colby sipped his coffee, watching the door. I am not here to play hero. I just want the cancer cut out. You planning to let the system handle it? Colby looked at him, dead calm. I plan to burn the system that let this happen. The man tapped the table twice and stood. Then you better move fast. Once this gets out, it will not stay quiet for long. As he left, Colby leaned back, the echo of the exit bell ringing in his ears. This was no longer just about a lie. It was about dismantling everything built on that lie. And he was just getting started. The next morning, Colby walked into a cozy downtown cafe, one of Tessa's favorites. The place smelled of burnt espresso and fresh croissants. It used to mean comfort. Now it smelled like betrayal. He spotted her best friend, Mara, sitting alone at a window table. Blonde hair tied back, sunglasses on the table, sipping from a lavender latte. She had no idea he was coming. Colby approached casually. Morning, Mara. She looked up, startled, then forced a quick smile. Colby, this is a surprise. Is it? He said, sitting across from her without asking. Because I am starting to think a lot of things are not surprises anymore. Her smile faded. What do you mean? He leaned in slightly. You were there, Mara. I know. You booked the Airbnb for them. You forwarded the fake invoices. You even covered for her when she said she was at your place in Asheville. Her face hardened. I was just trying to help a friend. No, Colby said. You were helping her commit fraud. You were helping her lie to a man raising a daughter that was never his. Mara looked away. I did not know it would get this deep. Yes, you did, Colby snapped, voice low but cutting. You knew the moment you saw my signature on something I never signed. She paused, guilt crawling into her features. What are you going to do? Colby reached into his coat, pulled out a flash drive. He slid it across the table. You are going to walk into Nolan's brokerage office and plug this into their admin system. Just open one file. That is it. Mara stared at it. What is on it? Proof. You are either a witness, he said, standing, or a suspect. He left her there, fingers shaking, guilt finally sinking in. Colby sat at his workbench that night, surrounded by paper. Not printed emails or bank statements, actual legal documents. Deeds, ownership transfers, business formation records. Each page told a story. Together, they formed a noose. The fake loan under his name was processed through a fraudulent escrow firm. Colby had tracked down the firm's real owner, a man who died in 2017. Everything after that was identity theft. He pinned photos to the wall. Tessa, Nolan, Mara, Congressman Haskins, 2 more names from the ledger, Clarence DeWitt, a shell company accountant, and Ruth Yanez, listed as a consultant. Both had connections to political PACs that received money from the fake real estate accounts. The wall looked like something from his CIA field days. Red thread connected them. But this time, it was not about weapons or targets. It was personal. Suddenly, a phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted number. Drive plugged in. File opened. No one saw me. M. Colby exhaled slowly. Good. It was time to let the system do what it never does on its own. Eat itself alive. He opened a private server and uploaded the entire case file. Every name, every shell, every falsified document. Once complete, the system would begin sending pieces of the puzzle anonymously to journalists, watchdog groups, and legal offices. But Colby was not done yet. He looked at Ivy's photo taped to the edge of the monitor. This was for her. Not just revenge, but protection. Because if they got away with this, she would grow up believing lies win. He would not let that happen. He closed the laptop. The match had been lit. And soon, every paper castle they built would burn. 3 weeks later, the courthouse lobby buzzed with low murmurs and shuffling feet. Colby stood in a charcoal suit, sharp, composed, holding a folder in his hand. Tessa arrived late. Her face was drawn, her eyes hollow. She wore a neutral pantsuit, her expression already defensive. Their lawyer greeted them both, but Colby did not look at her. He was focused on the door ahead, the one leading to Courtroom 2B. Ivy's custody hearing. Inside, the judge was a woman in her early 60s, stone-faced, known for her zero tolerance on lies. Colby sat at the petitioner's table. Tessa sat across. Mr. Raines, you have requested full legal custody, the judge began. Yes, Your Honor, Colby said clearly. I have filed supporting evidence of paternity fraud, identity forgery, and documented financial manipulation under my name. The judge raised an eyebrow. Do you have proof? Colby stood and walked to the bench. He handed the folder over. Inside, DNA results, notarized bank statements, time-stamped audio clips, and screenshots of messages between Tessa and Nolan, discussing Colby like he was a problem to solve. Tessa's lawyer stood, already rattled. Your Honor, we believe this is excessive and emotionally motivated. The judge cut him off. Do you dispute the DNA results? Tessa looked down. Silent. No, the lawyer said quietly. The judge turned to Colby. Despite not being the biological father, you still wish to take full responsibility for the child? I raised her. She knows me as her father, and I will never be anything less. The courtroom was quiet. The judge nodded slowly. I will review this thoroughly, but based on what I have seen, this is no longer a matter of custody. It is a matter of justice. Colby sat back down. He had not won yet, but the walls were closing in, and Tessa felt every inch of it. It happened on a Sunday. Nolan and Tessa were seated at an upscale brunch spot, laughing with a few close friends, people who once saw them as a power couple. Tessa's eyes flicked to her phone, checking for messages. Then it rang. She answered, casually at first, but her smile dropped fast. Her face drained of color. Excuse me, she asked, voice tight. Nolan leaned over, whispering, What is going on? She stood up slowly, covering the phone's mic. Our joint accounts, they are frozen. Nolan stared at her. All of them? Tessa nodded. Before he could react, his own phone buzzed. Then again, and again. He fumbled with it, text after text. Alerts. Flags. The brokerage accounts were flagged for fraud investigation. The bank called twice. He ignored it. Someone reported us, he said, voice flat. Tessa's voice dropped. It is Colby. You told me he would not go this far, Nolan snapped. You told me you were clean. She shot back. All around them, people had started to stare. Colby, miles away, was watching the chaos unfold on live traffic cams and public records. The freeze order had been executed through anonymous tips backed by real evidence. It was the first visible crack. Not loud, just precise. Measured destruction. He watched Tessa walk out of the restaurant, her heels clicking too fast. Nolan followed behind, looking over his shoulder like someone might grab him. Colby sat back in his chair, sipping coffee, relaxed. This was only phase 1. The paper was burned. Now came the people. 2 days later, the first arrest came. Colby watched the news quietly from his living room. Ivy was asleep in the next room. He kept the volume low. Breaking: Nolan Becker, CEO of Becker Holdings, arrested for real estate wire fraud and falsified financial reporting. The footage showed Nolan being let out in handcuffs, face stiff, jaw clenched. Reporters swarmed the scene, shouting questions. His lawyer pushed them back with a coat. Colby muted the TV and let the silence speak louder. What the media did not know yet was that the arrest was triggered by a single file placed on the firm's main system, the one Mara had uploaded. It contained not just false invoices, but signed emails between Nolan and PAC donors discussing how to sanitize political contributions. That was the thread Colby needed to pull. Congressman Haskins had not shown up in public in 4 days. The walls were folding in on him, too. Colby opened his encrypted laptop and sent another bundle. Documents, payment trails, and chat logs directly to a journalist he had worked with during his CIA years, someone who knew how to handle dangerous stories. He included no personal identifiers. Just the message: start with Silverhawk Development, follow the trail, and protect the child's name. Then he shut the laptop. There was no need for grand speeches. Colby was not trying to be a hero. He was cleaning up what they tried to bury him under. And Nolan's arrest was just the first domino. Colby walked into Courtroom 2B again. This time, it was not just a custody hearing. It was a continuation. The judge had reviewed the evidence. But now, Tessa was being called to respond directly to what had surfaced in the media. She looked fragile now, hair pulled back too tightly. Makeup could not hide the sleeplessness in her face. Her lawyer looked more like a damage control officer than legal counsel. Colby handed the judge a flash drive. "I would like to submit this recording," he said. The judge raised an eyebrow. "What does it contain?" Colby stood straight. "An audio file. Ivy calling another man daddy, followed by a private recording. Tessa admitting to using me for financial leverage." The judge played the file. The courtroom was silent except for Ivy's innocent voice. "I missed you, Daddy Nolan." Then came Tessa's whisper. "Colby is smart, but he only sees what I let him." It played twice. The judge let it hang in the air. Tessa's face cracked for the first time. Her hands clenched. She said nothing. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Raines, do you wish to contest the file's authenticity?" Her lawyer stood, voice weak. "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded slowly. "Then let me be very clear. Custody is not simply about biology. It is about stability, consistency, and truth. And only one parent in this room has demonstrated all three." She turned to Colby. "You are hereby granted full legal custody. Tessa Raines, your visitation will be reviewed after the criminal proceedings." Tessa's mouth opened, but no words came. Colby stood, nodded once. Justice was not loud, but it was final. The fallout hit faster than anyone expected. After the court granted Colby full custody, local reporters picked up the story, not the full operation, not yet. Just the personal scandal, DNA fraud, child identity questions, asset manipulation, a public arrest. The headlines ran with it. Local CEO arrested in real estate fraud. Ex-CIA operative wins sole custody in DNA scandal. Colby hated the attention, but it worked in his favor. The school called him in the next day. Ivy's teacher, Miss Kelly, sat across from him with a forced smile. "I wanted to check in," she said gently. "Ivy has been confused lately." "She said she has 2 dads," Colby said, not flinching. Miss Kelly looked uncomfortable. Some of the kids heard. Parents have questions. There's talk around the other man. Nolan Becker. Colby cut in, calm but firm. He is not her father. Not legally. Not biologically. Not emotionally. The teacher nodded quickly. Of course. I just thought. You do not need to worry, he said. Ivy will be fine. I just need you to teach her, not define her. As he left, Ivy ran up the hallway, backpack bouncing. Dad. She hugged his leg tight. He picked her up with a soft smile. You ready to go home? She nodded against his shoulder. Do I still have two dads? He took a long breath. No, you just have one. And I am never leaving. She smiled. That was all the confirmation he needed. Truth had weight, but so did love. And Colby planned to protect both, with everything he had left. Colby sat across from Darren Langley, a man who once stood next to him at his wedding. They were in a small conference room, booked under Colby's alias, empty except for a laptop and 2 cups of untouched coffee. You knew, Colby said, staring through him. About the signatures. The loan. You helped them get it pushed through. Darren squirmed in his seat. It was not like that. Yes, it was, Colby said. You work in mortgage approvals. Tessa could not have done it without someone inside. Darren swallowed hard. She said it was for your investment, that you were traveling and wanted to fast-track it. And you did not verify? Colby leaned in. You approved over $400,000 under my name without hearing my voice. Darren rubbed his forehead. Man, I am sorry. I messed up. No, Colby said. You chose a side. There was silence, thick and sharp. Colby slid a document across the table. This is a statement you are going to sign. It names the bank contacts, the timestamps, the application route. You are going to turn state witness before the feds rope you in with Nolan. Darren paled. You are threatening me? No, Colby said calmly. I am offering you a lighter way down. Darren stared at the document. His hands were shaking. You will still lose your job, Colby added. But maybe not your freedom. Darren sighed, reached for the pen. Colby stood. And Darren, yeah. Next time you stand by a man at his wedding, mean it. He walked out without another word. Another weak link broken. Another step closer to the core. By the end of the week, Colby's evidence had reached every corner he aimed for. 3 executives from Nolan's former firm had resigned quietly under pressure. 2 banks had opened internal investigations. And Congressman Haskins? He was missing. The media suspected a medical leave. But Colby knew better. He had not just disappeared, he was running. Colby used an old contact in Panama to track financial movement. One flagged transaction led to a luxury condo in Belize. He sent a burner message to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit with a full tip sheet. There would be no hiding behind politics now. But as he crossed names off his list, one name still lingered. Tessa. She had not been arrested. Not yet. But the IRS had frozen her assets. The real estate licenses were under review. Her social media was gone. Her reputation, ruined. Still, she walked free. That night, she called. Colby let it ring, then answered on the final tone. I want to see Ivy, she said quietly. You lost that right, he said. She is still my daughter, Tessa insisted. No, Colby said, voice cold. She was. And maybe one day, when she understands everything, you can ask her forgiveness. But not now. You are turning her against me. No, he said. You did that the second you made her lie. Silence. Then Tessa's voice broke. Are you going to ruin me completely? Colby's answer came slow and firm. I am not ruining you, Tessa. You did that yourself. I am just making sure you face it. He ended the call. This was not the end. But she finally knew it was coming. The building sat on the corner of Ashby and 4th, marketed as a wellness center, but Colby knew better. He had walked past it 3 times that morning, checking angles, watching for traffic. From the outside, it looked like a yoga studio. Inside, it was listed as the headquarters of Silverhawk Development, the very company laundering funds through Shell Investments. Colby wore a baseball cap low, sunglasses on. Just another face in the city. He stepped inside calmly, holding a small case under his arm. A woman at the front desk smiled without looking up. Welcome to Silverheart Wellness. Do you have an appointment? He placed a business card on the desk. It had no name, just a scannable code. She scanned it, and her expression changed fast. Please wait here. Someone will be right with you. He sat on a leather chair, glanced around. Everything in the room was too clean, too unused. It was a front, no doubt. Two men emerged from a hallway, dressed in plain slacks and button-downs. Sir, we will need to ask you a few questions. Colby stood. Then let us start with one of mine. He opened the case and slid out 3 binders, paper copies of bank wires, false invoices, and employee logs linking Silverhawk to PAC donations and foreign business accounts. The documents were marked with Prepared for Review, Federal Crime Unit. The taller man paled. Colby looked him dead in the eye. This is not a negotiation. You have 48 hours to cooperate or your entire staff will be in cuffs before Friday. The second man tried to play cool. And if we walk away now? Colby smiled. Then I release every file to the press. And your names go down with the rest. He turned and walked out, not waiting for their answer. Sometimes, truth was not about loud explosions. Sometimes it was about leaving the right bomb behind and walking away. She answered on the second knock. Ruth Yanez, mid-40s, polished, calm. The kind of woman who could smile while setting fires behind the scenes. Colby stood in her doorway with no smile at all. You should not be here, she said, as darting down the hallway. I am already in your doorway, Colby replied. So we are past that. He stepped inside. She did not stop him. Ruth walked to the kitchen. Coffee? No, just names. She turned sharply. You think you scare me, Colby? I have sat across from men far more dangerous than you. He nodded. And that is why you know this is real. He placed a small photo envelope on the table. Inside, a printed snapshot of her meeting with Congressman Haskins 3 months ago, along with a typed note summarizing a cash transfer of $85,000. Her hand trembled, just for a second. I am not here for a confession, he said. I am here for leverage. You tell me who ran point between Nolan and Haskins, and I will make sure your name does not show up in the first round of indictments. Ruth sat down slowly. Clarence DeWitt, she whispered. He brokered the code sale, used Haskins' connections to get federal contracts under shell entities. I just moved money around. That is all I ever did. Colby's voice was sharp. That was enough to make you complicit. Her eyes locked on his. And what about your wife? Colby did not blink. She gets what she earned, just like the rest of you. He stood, opened the door, and paused. You have 1 day. After that, your name goes in the file. Ruth sat at the table in silence, the envelope still in her hands. For the first time, she looked afraid. The next morning, Colby met Detective Lorna Griggs, a Fed-level investigator with eyes that missed nothing. They stood on a rooftop parking lot under gray skies, the city buzzing far below. She held the thick folder he had delivered anonymously the week before. You really did your homework, she said, flipping through photos, wire maps, and notarized letters. This is not just domestic fraud. This is high-level international laundering. And it all ties back to political funding, real estate, and stolen software, Colby said. Lorna eyed him. And you are sure you do not want credit? I do not need credit, he said. I need results. She nodded. Haskins is done. DeWitt is being tracked. Yanez, well, she is cracking. Colby folded his arms. She should. Lorna closed the file. I have to ask, what happens when this ends? What are you going to do once they are gone? Colby looked out over the skyline. Raise my daughter. Sleep without looking over my shoulder. Maybe build something honest. She smirked. You are not that clean, Rains. No, he agreed. But I am cleaner than them. Lorna slid the file into her case. You have given us the fire. We will burn the rest. She turned to leave. Colby stopped her. And Tessa. Lorna hesitated. She has not been charged. Yet. But if the right testimony comes through, her name is not staying off the board. Colby nodded once. Do what you have to. She walked away, heels clicking. Colby stood alone, wind brushing his jacket. There was no explosion, no gunfight, no screaming. But something had shifted. The silence was not empty. It was the sound of an empire starting to fall. Colby sat in the dim light of his garage turn command center, eyes locked on a blinking icon. A new message had arrived. Encrypted. Untraceable. Sent to one of his old burner accounts. He clicked it open. Subject line. You missed one. Inside, a single PDF attachment. He opened it, expecting another bank record or surveillance log. Instead, it was a declassified CIA fragment, one he had personally submitted nearly 6 years ago. Top-level encryption tech. It had his watermark, his project ID. But something was wrong. There was a second signature at the bottom. Tessa Raines. He stared at it, unmoving. Tessa had access to that data, but only through him. She had asked innocent questions back then. What are you working on? Why do you double encrypt that folder? He never imagined she had copied the files. He clicked through the rest of the document trail. There it was, his own software being rerouted through Monarch Systems, a ghost corporation. They had weaponized his code. Not for espionage, for profit. Real estate, donations, offshore accounts. It was all a cover. The real money was in digital access. Privileged government-level code leaked through marital trust. She had used love to steal national security. And now that he was exposing the front end, someone in that network wanted him to see the back end. Colby leaned back, chest tight. This was not just betrayal anymore. It was treason by proxy. The message had a closing line. You exposed the money. Now expose the mind behind it. Haskins is not the top. He is the bait. Colby closed the file. Everything he thought was the truth? It had just been the first layer. The war was deeper now, and the stakes were national. That evening, Colby knocked on Tessa's apartment door. She opened it slowly, guarded. What do you want now? He held up a tablet. I want you to tell me the truth about Monarch Systems. She froze. Her lips parted, then closed again. She stepped aside, wordless, letting him in. Colby walked to the center of the room, dropped the tablet on the coffee table. On the screen, their old home network logs, side by side with upload timestamps to Monarch server. A perfect match. Tessa sat down like her knees were folding in. I was just supposed to copy files, Colby. They told me it was temporary. That it was a legal back channel for contract vetting. Who told you? He interrupted. She looked up, tears welling. Nolan. And someone from D.C. I never met in person. He called himself Caldwell. He said it would help make up for everything. Colby's jaw tightened. You sold off CIA-level encryption. You risked national infrastructure for what? A beachfront condo? Ivy's tuition? She buried her face in her hands. I did not know it would go that far. You knew enough to lie. I loved you, she whispered. He laughed once short, bitter. You loved access. You loved control. She looked up, furious now. You were never here. You were a shadow in your own life, Colby. You married the agency, not me. And you married opportunity, he said coldly. Silence hung between them. Finally, he stood. This is your chance. Turn yourself in. Or when this goes public, you go down with them. Tessa did not respond. She just stared at the screen, watching her entire world uncoil. Colby walked out. This was no longer just personal. It was a mission, and the target list had changed. Colby flew to D.C. using a forged identity he kept alive for years, a fallback from his field days. He landed, moved fast, and by nightfall, he was inside a borrowed surveillance fin 2 blocks from an address connected to Monarch Systems. It was a brownstone near Logan Circle. Nothing flashy. That made it dangerous. He scanned through thermal imaging. 2 occupants. One on the top floor. One in the study. He ran the name, Martin Caldwell. No government position. No real records. But attached to 3 lobbying firms, 2 foreign charities, and 1 classified CIA blacklist. Colby grinned without humor. He knew what Caldwell was, a handler without a badge. The kind who moved funds, not guns. Quietly kept operations off-book, even when they started in someone's kitchen. He activated the mic on his drone, hovering silently near the 2nd-floor window. Inside, Caldwell spoke on the phone. Raines is sniffing too close. We need to pull back exposure. Shut down Silverhawk. Repackage under a new name. And if he talks, well, leak his CIA record. Make him look unstable. Colby recorded every word. He tapped a message into his secure channel and hit send. Surveillance file ready. Caldwell confirmed. Recommend join up. I will handle the bait. He shut the laptop and stared out the windshield at the unlit building. They thought he was chasing personal revenge. They had no idea. He was setting the trap. And now, the people who once operated in silence were about to face public exposure under floodlights. The letter arrived in a clean white envelope, delivered by hand, no postage, no return address. Colby opened it with steady fingers, already knowing what it was. Petition for divorce. Filed by Tessa Raines. Grounds: irreconcilable differences. He stared at the page for several seconds, unmoved. Then he smirked. Not because it hurt, but because the timing was desperate. She was trying to pivot, play the victim, create distance from the case, and paint herself as the one who walked away. Smart move, if it had come 6 months earlier. He walked straight into his lawyer's office that afternoon. She filed for divorce? The attorney said, flipping through the documents. That is bold, considering what she is facing. Colby handed over a USB. Counter everything. File the motion to freeze any remaining marital assets. This is not a settlement. This is defense. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. She is trying to beat the system. She is about to learn, Colby said. I built the system. Within 48 hours, her petition was rejected due to open criminal investigations. Tessa received the news alone in her apartment. And for the first time, she realized she was not the one in control anymore. Colby found the journal buried deep in the metadata of a secured Monarch folder. It was not labeled, not encrypted like the rest. Just a series of voice memos. He played the first one through his earpiece while driving back to Virginia. Tessa's voice filled the car. He never checks anything. I can leave the flash drive out in the open, and he still will not look. All he cares about is his job. His silence. That is how I got in. Colby's knuckles tightened around the wheel. She had been narrating her steps like a project. He played the next. Nolan said if I can just get 3 more files, the sale goes through. Then we are out. New names. New lives. Colby never has to know. And another. Sometimes, I still think about what it would be like if he saw me. Not just with his eyes, but for who I really am. I do not think he ever did. That is why this is so easy. Colby stopped the recording. This was not a confession. It was a diary. Proof of planning. Proof of intent. And proof that Tessa had been in deeper than she ever admitted. He uploaded the full audio log to a secure server, timestamped, authenticated. It would be part of the final strike. This was not just personal betrayal anymore. This was evidence. The media frenzy began with a single tweet. A verified reporter posted, multiple shell companies tied to Silverhawk development collapse overnight. FBI raid confirmed. Arrests pending. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. News vans flooded the streets outside Silverhawk's former office. Employees were escorted out under federal watch. Files were seized. Phones confiscated. One of the executives, a smug man named Torrance, was caught on camera screaming at agents. I have rights. Colby watched it from home, the screen's glow casting hard shadows across his face. He made a private call to Detective Griggs. Do not forget Clarence DeWitt, he said. He is still in play. We already picked him up, she replied. He flipped in 2 hours. Named everyone. And Haskins? Colby asked. He is next. Colby ended the call. Outside, Ivy played in the yard, chalking flowers onto the pavement. He stepped out, sat beside her. She looked up with a grin. Did they catch the bad guys? He nodded. Almost all of them. She smiled, then went back to drawing. Colby watched her for a moment. The empire was falling. But the world he was building now, that was what mattered most. They reconvened in Courtroom 2B under full security. Not for custody this time. For evidence review. Tessa sat at the defendant's table, flanked by 2 federal attorneys. Her expression was hollow. Lipstick wiped off. No jewelry. Hair pulled into a low bun like she had stopped pretending. The judge looked serious. We have received a new submission. Audio files. Personal voice memos from Mrs. Raines' private device. Confirmed as authentic. Colby did not look at her. He just listened. The courtroom played Tessa's own words, echoing. If I can just get 3 more files, the sale goes through. Colby never has to know. Her attorney stood. These were never meant for anyone. This is a violation of privacy. The judge cut him off. These are recordings of a criminal plan, and they directly support the federal case. Colby finally spoke. I do not care what she meant them for. I care what she did, and what she cost. The judge nodded slowly. Given the evidence, this court formally supports all pending charges. Mrs. Rain's visitation rights remain revoked pending final criminal trial. Tessa tried to speak, but nothing came. She sat back, trembling. Colby stood, walked out calmly. In war, the final blow is not always the loudest. Sometimes, it is the moment the enemy realizes they already lost. The press conference was supposed to be routine, another smiling speech in a blue tie, standing on a podium backed by flags and friendly faces. Cameras were rolling. Reporters filled the room. Then the second row received a mass email. No subject line, no name, just a file titled, Campaign Funding Internal Wire Locks. It hit every inbox at once. Within seconds, whispers rippled across the room. Phones lit up. One reporter stood mid-sentence. Another read the file out loud, numbers, names, donation sources from shell companies, all tied directly to Congressman Jared Haskins. A journalist shouted from the back, care to explain the $2.6 million routed through DeWitt Consulting last spring? The room cracked. Haskins froze. Aide to his left leaned in, whispering frantically. More questions followed. Louder. Sharper. Did you authorize the contract with Monarch Systems? Who is Martin Caldwell to you? Were you aware of Nolan Becker's indictment before your last vote on housing reform? The cameras caught it all, his sweating face, the breaking of composure, the visible panic. He walked off stage. It did not matter. Within the hour, 4 news outlets ran the story. Haskins exposed, corruption in tech, real estate, and defense. By midnight, he resigned. No speech, just a press release. Colby watched it alone, sitting in the quiet. He did not cheer. He did not smirk. He just crossed another name off the list. The powerful were falling, one file at a time. Nolan tried to disappear. Private charter to Costa Rica. Rented under a false name. Cash transfer through an unregistered crypto wallet. Colby was already 10 steps ahead. He had flagged Nolan's passport weeks ago, after planting evidence through a mirrored IP node Nolan had unknowingly connected to. The plane never got clearance. Homeland Security boarded before the jet even warmed up. Nolan was dragged off the tarmac, screaming about political setups and international harassment. It was all caught on camera by a freelance journalist tipped off in advance. The footage went viral. Disgraced broker arrested on runway. Connection to federal laundering op exposed. In lockup, Nolan tried to cut a deal. But he had nothing left to trade. Everyone had already turned. He sat in a federal holding cell, empty-eyed, facing 25 years minimum. His empire was gone, and all he had left was a concrete bench and the sound of truth closing in. Colby received the arrest report with one word stamped at the top. Complete. He deleted it. And then he picked up Ivy from school. She jumped into his arms. What did you do today? She asked. He smiled. Just cleaned something up. The invite arrived in gold foil. A private gala hosted by the Beck Foundation, a wealthy nonprofit tied to one of the smaller PACs involved in the laundering scheme. It was supposed to be their clean slate, a way to restore image, pull in donors, and bury scandal. They had no idea Colby had already infiltrated the planning committee under another name. He stood near the bar in a black suit, quiet, unnoticed, eyes scanning the room. Tessa arrived with a lawyer on her arm. Hair done, smile polished. She looked healed, like the damage had been dressed and painted over. She did not see him yet. On the other side, Ruth Yanez circled donors, pretending none of it ever happened. Cameras rolled. Laughter echoed. And then Colby walked to the stage. Unannounced. Calm. Confident. The room quieted in slow waves. Good evening, he said into the mic. My name is Colby Rains. I am not a donor. I am not a speaker, but I am the man whose life was almost destroyed by the people in this room. Gasps. Whispers. Tessa's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Colby reached into his jacket and pulled out a single tablet. This is a real-time broadcast link. The file on it includes bank statements, legal filings, audio evidence, and video of private confessions, all authenticated. All now live. He tapped the screen. The room's massive projector flipped from sponsor logos to confidential documents. One by one, name by name, every guest stared at their own sins being aired. He looked down at the crowd, no smile, no emotion. The truth is not always a whisper, he said. Sometimes it needs a room like this. And then he walked off stage. Behind him, glass reputations cracked under the weight of truth. The stream went live on 3 major platforms. By morning, over 4.2 million views. Colby's video, cut sharply with visuals, audio logs, and sync timelines, had gone from expose to evidence. Social media erupted. Comment threads exploded. And mainstream media had no choice but to cover it. The raided gala, corrupt donors exposed live in real time. Some tried to discredit him. But the evidence was too clean, too complete. No speculation, just truth. Ruth Yanez issued a statement through tears. I had no idea the extent. It was a lie. Everyone knew it. Donors dropped the Beck Foundation overnight. Corporate sponsors vanished. Investigations opened across 3 states. And Tessa? She became the face of betrayal, not just in marriage, but in national security. Colby never said another word publicly. He let the story speak for itself. Let the world see what happens when you betray the wrong man, when you confuse kindness for blindness. By the end of the week, Colby was done testifying. His silence was not weakness. It was closure. And for the ones who thought they had buried him, he had just turned their spotlight into a mirror. Colby walked past the shattered glasses and stunned donors, his footsteps echoing down the silent hallway of the venue. Security did not stop him. They recognized the man who had just made half the city untouchable. Outside, the cold air bit into his face. Paparazzi were still waiting by the exit, but not for him. Their eyes were on the people behind him, the ones who once smiled for headlines, now ducking behind coats and tinted cars. Colby kept walking. He did not need applause. He had not done this for attention, and he sure as hell had not done it for redemption. He had done it because it was right. Behind him, chaos bloomed. Investigations reopened. A senator was subpoenaed. Ruth Yanez disappeared off social media. Tessa was placed under federal restriction. Nolan's plea deal was denied. In the world, it finally saw. But Colby, he went home. He walked into his quiet house, Ivy asleep on the couch with a half-drawn picture in her lap. He tucked her in, brushed a lock of hair from her forehead, and stood in silence. No one cheered. No music swelled. But for the first time in years, Colby exhaled without tension in his chest. Sometimes, the loudest justice is silence. 3 days later, the final warrants dropped. Colby received the notification through an anonymous email. Operation Monarch officially dismantled. Caldwell had vanished, likely overseas, but his bank accounts were frozen, assets seized, aliases flagged. He would not move freely again. The Justice Department released a rare public statement. Through coordinated internal whistleblowing, the system corrected itself, and it will remain under watch. They never named Colby, never credited him. That was fine. Detective Griggs called one last time. We got him. You did it. No, Colby said. You did. I just handed you the truth. She laughed. You ever think of consulting? He smiled faintly. I think I am done with shadows. He ended the call and stepped outside. The sky was gray, but it did not feel heavy anymore. Not like it used to. For once, the storm had passed, and he had lived through it. Tessa's face was everywhere. Talk shows. Clickbait thumbnails. Reddit threads with titles like, CIA's baby mama gets burned, calls another man dad, loses it all, wife's affair exposes government secrets. Karma delivered in HD. Her job was long gone. Her degree revoked after the university found discrepancies in her financial aid documents, fake claims Nolan helped her file years ago. Even her family stepped away quietly, no public defense. They knew better than to fight truth. She tried to release a statement. A video, tearful, scripted. I made mistakes. I was manipulated, but the world did not want it. They had already picked their sides, and Colby never needed to say a word. He had made her face herself. No yelling, no smear campaign, just truth, delivered clean, and without mercy. It was quiet in Courtroom 3C. No cameras, no press, just Colby, Ivy, the judge, and a file folder thick with signatures. This was not about custody anymore. That had been settled. This was about name. The judge looked over her glasses at Colby. You are requesting full legal name change of the minor. From Ivy Grace Rains to Ivy Grace Rains. Colby smiled. She picked that herself. The judge smiled too. Unusual, but sweet. She turned to Ivy. Is that what you want, young lady? Ivy, legs swinging from the chair, nodded. He is my only dad. Colby's throat tightened. The judge tapped her gavel once. Approved. Papers were signed. The seal was placed. Colby stood, holding Ivy's hand as they walked out of the courtroom. A new name. A clean start. Not erasing the past. Just not letting it win. It was over. The federal prosecutor stood in front of the mic, flat voice reading off the final outcome. Tessa Rains will serve 28 months in federal custody, followed by probation. Charges reduced in exchange for cooperation and full testimony against Martin Caldwell, Nolan Becker, and other parties within the Monarch Systems network. Colby watched it all from home. He did not flinch. Ivy was in the next room drawing flowers again. They had offered Tessa 5 years. She gave them something better, documents hidden in old accounts, messages buried in draft folders, and one hand-signed note from Caldwell himself. Her plea deal had value, but it did not change the past. Colby visited her once. She looked different. No makeup, dull jumpsuit. Tired. He stood on one side of the glass. She picked up the phone first. I am sorry, she said. He stayed silent. She continued, voice low. I did not know who I was anymore. I thought I was surviving, but I was just lying. Colby finally spoke. Ivy is safe. She still has nightmares sometimes, but she is healing. Tessa nodded. Will you tell her I miss her? No, Colby said. When you are ready, you can tell her yourself. He hung up and walked away before she could answer. Forgiveness was not owed. It was earned. In his garage, Colby pulled out the last encrypted hard drive from the old life. The one that held the original version of the software stolen through Monarch. He had rewritten it completely, scrubbed it clean of tracking, spyware, backdoors. Rebuilt it with open-source walls and digital transparency tools. This time, he would not sell it. He uploaded the full package to a public server under a new name. GhostLock, free citizen encryption. Within 2 weeks, it hit tech forums like wildfire. Journalists picked it up. Cyber activists called it a game changer. Government eyes stayed quiet, but Colby saw the download stacking. He did not put his name on it. He did not need to. The people it protected, that was his reward. The software they tried to sell for millions? Now free. And unbreakable. The letters came once a month. Tessa wrote them from prison, clean handwriting. No return address on the outside. Just Ivy's name in soft ink. Colby stacked them in a locked drawer. He never opened them. Not out of anger. Out of discipline. He would let Ivy decide when, if those pages mattered. If those words were ever needed. For now, she did not ask. And Colby did not offer. Sometimes, love meant silence. And sometimes, silence was the safest way to protect a child's heart. The cabin sat in the Colorado woods, just like he remembered. Colby's father had taken him there as a boy, off-grid, quiet, peaceful. Now, decades later, he brought Ivy. She helped unpack groceries, her boots crunching leaves on the porch. Inside, there was no Wi-Fi, no TV, no signals, just firewood, old books, and space to breathe. They cooked over the stove, played cards by lantern light, slept under heavy blankets. One night, Ivy asked softly, "Are you still mad at her?" Colby looked into the fire for a long time. "No," he said. "I just remember better now." She nodded, leaning into him. In the silence, There was no anger left. No heat. Just the warmth of stillness. Peace is not forgetting. It is remembering without bleeding. The courthouse was quiet that morning. Just a few people in line, a sleepy clerk behind thick glass, and the smell of fresh paper and printer ink. Colby stood with Ivy beside the records office door, holding a manila envelope close to his chest. Inside were the finalized adoption papers. Not custody, not temporary care. This was permanent. The clerk looked over the documents, tapping on her keyboard with soft clicks. Name change and legal guardianship confirmed, she said. Do you want the new certificate mailed or printed? Printed, Colby replied. She disappeared behind a door. Ivy stood on tiptoes, peeking at the forms. So what does this mean? Colby knelt down beside her. It means no matter what happened before, from today on, the world knows what we already knew. She tilted her head. What's that? That you are mine, and I am yours. The clerk returned with a thick sheet of paper. Ivy Grace Rains. 2 names, both earned. Colby handed her the paper. She stared at it like it was magic. Looks weird, she giggled. But kinda cool. It is exactly right, Colby said. They walked out into the sunlight, the wind brushing against their faces. He did not feel like a spy anymore. Or a soldier. Just a father who had finally taken his daughter home, fully, freely, and without a shadow left behind. Back home, Colby opened the attic for the first time in months. Boxes sat in the corner, files, drives, field gear, the old burner phones, and surveillance backups he no longer needed. All labeled, sealed, stacked in order. The war chest. He stood still for a moment, then grabbed a large bin and started emptying it. One by one, he dropped the tech into it. The recording devices, the encrypted drives, the tools of exposure. He was not deleting the past. He was retiring it. Downstairs, Ivy was decorating the living room for Halloween, cutting shapes into orange paper. Do you want to hang ghosts? She called. Colby smiled faintly. No ghosts in this house. He tossed the last encrypted laptop into the bin, shut it, and carried it down the stairs. Later, he drove to a disposal facility. He watched everything vanish into a secure shredder, no fanfare, no turning back. When he returned home, Ivy had hung a hand-drawn sign on the front door. No secrets allowed. He stopped and stared at it for a long second. Then he stepped inside, a quiet peace wrapping around him. The house felt lighter. No more watching over his shoulder. No more wars inside the walls. Just life. Just them. Months passed. Ivy grew taller. Smarter. She started asking questions, not just about school or games, but about the world. About justice. About people. Colby answered honestly, always careful, never bitter. He did not hide the truth, but he never weaponized it either. One day, she sat beside him on the porch, legs swinging. Do people always pay for what they do? She asked. Colby looked out at the trees. No, he said, but sometimes you get a chance to make sure they do. And when you get that chance, you take it. Not to hurt them, but to stop them from hurting anyone else. She nodded slowly, thinking, did Mom hurt other people too? Colby looked down at her. She hurt herself more than anyone. But yes, her choices had a cost. Ivy leaned her head on his shoulder. Then I am glad you stopped her. Colby swallowed the lump in his throat. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the porch. Inside, a letter from the Justice Department sat on the kitchen counter, thanking him for his anonymous work. The public would never know. But the reforms, the resignations, the new safeguards in place, they all carried his fingerprints. And someday, Ivy would understand it all. But for now, he let her rest against him. Because some truths do not have to be spoken. They just have to be lived. The cabin's air was crisp with winter coming in early. Ivy sat at the old wooden table, sketching in her notebook, the wood stove crackling behind her. Colby watched from across the room, sipping coffee, a blanket over his lap, not from weakness, but from comfort. Everything felt still. No sirens. No calls. No code to crack or file to trace. He had stepped away from the battlefield, and for once, nothing followed him home. On the shelf sat a simple black notebook, his personal log of the entire Monarch operation. Sealed. Dated. unpublished. He had no plan to release it. Not yet. Maybe one day, when Ivy was older. When she was ready to understand how close they came to losing everything and how one choice, one truth, saved them. She looked up from her drawing. Dad, yeah. What if one day, I want to be like you? He smiled, not the kind that fades quickly, but the kind that lives deep in the chest. Then I will teach you everything, except the mistakes. She nodded, thoughtful. They ate dinner by lantern light. No phones, no distractions, just stories, jokes, laughter. And when Ivy fell asleep on the couch under a thick quilt, Colby carried her to bed, tucked her in, and whispered, "You were the only mission that ever really mattered." He turned off the light. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. And for the first time in years, the man who once knew every exit, every threat, every lie, closed the door behind him without fear. Spring came slow, but it came. Colby walked the garden with Ivy one morning, helping her plant sunflower seeds in the soil. She giggled as she pressed them down with small hands. "Will they really grow that tall?" "Taller than you," Colby said. "But only if you take care of them." "I will," she said with certainty. A car drove past slowly down the dirt road. Just a tourist. They waved. He waved back. No one recognized him anymore. The man in the headlines was gone. The storm was over. What remained was a father, a protector, a survivor who chose healing over hiding. Later that day, Ivy asked, "Do you ever miss it?" Colby paused. "What?" "The old life." He looked out over the mountains. "No, I remember it, but I do not miss it, because I got the better ending." She smiled. "Because we won?" He shook his head. "Because we did not lose ourselves to it." That night, Colby placed a final page into a wooden box, a photo of him and Ivy standing in front of the courthouse, her new name printed below. He locked it, then turned off the lights. The story was over, but the lesson would live longer than the lie. Final moment. Let the viewers feel it. What would you have done if you were in Colby's place? Would you go as far for the truth? Or walk away before it destroyed you too? Drop your answer in the comments. I really want to know how you felt watching this story unfold. And hey, if this story hit something deep, if it made you feel, made you think, or made you question the power of karma and justice, then do one thing. Hit that like button gently. Subscribe if you want more stories that are bold, brutal, and unforgettable. And most importantly, take care of your truth. We'll meet again in the next thriller, the next revenge, the next reckoning. Until then, stay sharp, stay human. Take care.